Good morning. Welcome to the lecture on random variables. Before learning about random variables, we have to learn few basic concepts, that is probability, random experiment, event, sample space. So we will start one by one. First one is probability. The term probability stands for its randomness and uncertainty. Next is random experiment. An experiment which are performed essentially or repeatedly and which gives different outcomes when it is performed is called random experiment. Say for example, tossing a coin. We may get the outcomes like head or tail. So here tossing a coin is an random experiment. Similarly, throwing a die. While throwing a die, we may get the outcomes like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. So here throwing a die is an random experiment. Similarly, from a pack of 52 cards, drawing any two cards is an example for random experiment. Next is event. An event is a part of an experiment which gives different outcomes. Say for example, in tossing a coin, we may get the outcomes like head or tail. So here tossing a coin is an experiment and getting the outcomes like head or tail is an event. Similarly, in throwing a die, we may get the outcomes like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. So here throwing a die is an experiment and getting the outcomes 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 is an event. So from the pack of 52 cards, drawing any two cards, we can call it as an experiment, but drawing a card like king or queen is an event here. Next is sample space. Suppose if we group all the outcomes of the random experiment in a one platform, we can call that grouping is nothing but an sample space. So we can conclude like the set of all possible outcomes of a random experiment is called sample space and it is denoted by capital X. An example, in tossing a coin one time, the possible outcomes will be head and tail. So if I group all these outcomes in a single platform, so I will get the sample space like S is equal to tail and head. Similarly, in tossing a coin twice, the possible outcomes will be head head, head tail, tail head and tail tail. So here also I can group all these outcomes in a single platform, that is S is equal to head head, head tail, tail head and tail tail. So next is the actual concept, that is random variables. So random variables are nothing, it is linking between the real number with the outcome of the random experiment. So in mathematically we can define like that. A real variable is associated with every outcome of a random experiment is called random variables and is denoted by capital X, capital Y, capital Z and so on. Say for example, here I am taking one experiment, that is tossing a coin twice. So we know that if we toss a coin twice, the possible outcomes will be head head, head tail, tail head, tail tail. So if we group these outcomes, the sample space will be head head, head tail, tail head and tail tail, we will get it. So now we have to define the random variables. So I will denote x is equal to number of heads and y is equal to number of tails. Okay. Now I'm going to assign the real number for the random variables x and y. So I'm going to represent these random variables in the form of a tabular column. So in the row wise I took outcomes, random variables x and y. In the columns I took the outcomes like head head, head tail, tail head, tail tail. So since I defined here x denotes the number of heads, I can give for head head 2 because it contains two heads. I can give the number 2 for the random variable x. Similarly for head tail and tail head also, both the outcomes contain one head only. I can assign the number 1 for the random variable x here. So last one is tail tail. Here no heads at all. So I can assign the number 0 for the random variable x. So next coming to the random variable y. So in the first outcome, head head is there. So here no tails at all. I can give the number 0 for the random variable y. And next is head tail and tail tail, tail head. So I can give number 1 for the random variable y since it contains only one tail. Last one is tail tail. So here I can give 2 for the random variable y since it contains two tails. So next is a range of this random variable. So if we group all these real numbers in one platform, hence for the previous example, I can take the range of x is 0, 1, 2 because there the value of x varies from 0 to 2, and similarly y also it varies from 0 to 2. So the range of x will be 0, 1, 2 and y will be 0, 1, 2. So grouping all these real numbers is called random variables, range of random variables. Next one is discrete random variable. So if a random variable which takes a finite number of values or countably infinite number of values is called discrete random variable. So if the random variable having finite number of elements, so we can call it as a discrete random variable. Say for example, tossing a coin and observing the outcomes. So next is continuous random variable. If a random variable which takes uncountable number of values is called continuous random variable. So if the random variable contains infinitely many values, so it cannot be countable, so we can call such type of random variables are called continuous random variable. Example, weight of the articles. So in the next lecture I am going to discuss briefly about discrete probability distribution, continuous probability distribution, and also how to find the mean, variance and standard deviation for discrete probability distribution and continuous probability distribution. Thank you.